Hey everyone, Ryan from Ebike Escape, and in this video we're going to be checking out the brand new RadRover 6 Plus. It was just announced today, July 20th, 2021. It is the first new model for Rad Power Bikes to release in 2021, and although I don't yet have my hands on one, I wanted to do a video and give you some of my thoughts on the bike and talk a little bit about what this might mean for Rad Power Bikes going forward. Now, of course, I have no inside information. Some of these thoughts are just going to be speculation and just bringing up the question. So if you have any other thoughts, let me know in the comments below. And if you're looking at this RadRover 6 Plus, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Are you going to purchase this bike? Are you also considering the RadRover 5, or what other electric bikes are you looking at in this fat tire segment? And before we get too far into this, if you are looking to purchase a Rad Power Bike and you find some of my content helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you use the link in the description before you make your purchase. It's a free way for you to help support the channel and help me continue to review bikes like the RadRover 6 Plus. Hopefully I will have one here shortly. Now, they don't ship until September 30th. That was something I was very curious about when I first looked at the website to see what the shipping date was. But what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to walk through some of the things that come to mind. I'm obviously going to talk about some of the major differences. Now, if you're new to Rad Power Bikes, one of the things to keep in mind is that the RadRover is really their flagship model, and some people might argue with me, but I feel like they kind of invented the fat tire e-bike category in general. So back in 2015, they released the first generation of the RadRover. It's obviously gone through several iterations at this point. Version 5 is currently out until today, obviously the RadRover 6 Plus. So today, what did they announce? So the RadRover 6 Plus, which is the high step, and then they have the RadRover 6 Plus Step-thru. And what the company has done is built on their success with the RadRover and made some pretty significant changes, I would say, especially as it relates to the company as the whole. So let's just talk about some of the major changes just here briefly. So hydraulic brakes, no other Rad Power bike has had hydraulic brakes until now, so that is a pretty big significant change. A lot of people prefer them. It's a little easier to push the brakes. It doesn't require as much effort, and there's definitely less adjusting as well when it comes to hydraulic disc brakes. So I personally prefer them. So love to see that Rad Power Bikes is really going into a little bit more premium territory, if you will, here with the hydraulic disc brakes. Of course, there's plenty of other electric bikes that have had hydraulic disc brakes, but all the other models now have mechanical disc brakes, which still provide plenty of power, especially when you consider the price. They use Tektro Aries disc brakes, mechanical disc brakes, in all of their other models. So the other significant change is going to be that semi-integrated battery. Now, I was very curious about what they were going to announce with their newest model because, in my opinion, they've really had the frame designs where everything is kind of bolted on the outside of the frame, which means potentially years down the line, perhaps when no other components for the bikes are available or be very difficult, or maybe the technology has changed, you could pretty much strip out all of the old models and put on a new battery, put on a new controller, and just kind of affix it to the frame with no issues. Now, with the semi-integrated battery, of course, you have to use their now proprietary battery, which before you couldn't actually purchase, from my knowledge, a extra battery pack not from Rad. So that hasn't really changed. It's just that technically with the older models, if you really wanted to strip those bikes down, it's just a frame, and then they have the components on there to make it electric, the battery cradle and those kind of things. But the controller was external, and again, as well as the battery. So that is a significant change. And now there are other e-bike brands, of course. They have semi-integrated batteries. There's a company called Reengine, which makes battery packs that fit on a multitude of electric bikes. So that's something that's kind of interesting. And then, of course, you have the fully integrated packs that many companies are going with. And some of these electric bikes with some of those batteries, you can't even really tell that they're e-bikes. So interesting that they went with a semi-integrated design here. It still looks pretty good in my opinion. It's housed in the down tube, so same location as well. And I should note that the RadRover 6 Plus has the same capacity, 48 volt, 14 amp hours, and they did change the locking mechanism, so that's a change, and it's actually not on the battery itself, it's on the frame, so something to keep in mind. And I know that you can kind of better grip the battery. I saw that when I was looking into more information about the 6 Plus. Of course, I'll take a deeper look when I get my hands on it. And then they also have 10 LED lights to determine how much battery life you have. So that's kind of nice as well. Previously, I think it was 4 or 5 battery indicators. And to be honest, I didn't use it at all. I relied on the LCD screen, or perhaps just plugged my battery in when I knew it was getting somewhat low. The other thing they went away with was the simple display. So they have a new user interface system. Let's see if I can bring that up here on the screen so you can check that out. So there it is on the left. So on previous models, you just had the 3 buttons on the left, which it seems like there's similar functionality on the new one, but it is an LCD now on the left to give you your pedal assist numbers and those sort of things. And then on the front of the bike, you have a nicer looking but smaller LCD display. I'm just looking at some of the specs here. Real-time stats including mileage, power output, and trip time, and large practical buttons, simplified use while riding. So perhaps in winter that might be a little bit nice. You can hit the buttons a little bit easier, and there is now a built-in clock and also a trip timer. The other thing that Rad noted with their release of the RadRover 6 Plus was the frame. Now, at first glance, this really looks similar to the other model, but apparently they've made it so it is accessible for more riders. So actually, let's dig in a little bit deeper into that. I have the bikes open here, and actually I'm also going to check out the RadRover 5 so we can compare maybe some of the geometry and talk about sizing. What is nice is Rad has this really nice sizing chart, which I recommend before you purchase an electric bike from any company. Like, look at their size chart, because and I like the way Rad kind of spells it out here and talks about you can take your inseam length and see what bike is going to fit you best. So we can look here, and the RadRover 6 and 6 Plus are over here on the right side. And you can see that, of course, the Step-thru model has more accessibility on the lower of the leg length. And just comparing it here, so this bar is the RadRover 5. So it looks like they're saying that the RadRover 6 Plus will accommodate taller riders as well. And then it looks like the RadRover 5 goes down a little bit as it relates to leg length when you're comparing it directly to the RadRover 6 Plus. But then when you compare the RadRover 6 Plus Step-thru to the RadRover Step-thru one, you can see again there's a little bit extra, that yellow bar where it says you'll be able to pedal comfortably, but you may not be able to stand over the frame without it contacting your body. So you can see it goes slightly further down there on the RadRover 6 Plus Step-thru. So that's something that they said that they changed with this new frame, which is really good because, to be honest, if you haven't seen a RadRover in person, these are very large electric bikes. I was surprised when I unboxed one in early 2020. I just couldn't believe how big of an electric bike it is. So having it accessible and easier to step over and to hop on makes a lot of sense. So let's look at so we're on the geometry of the RadRover 5. I'm just looking here. The seat height is 28 to 36 and a half. And let's bring that up here on the RadRover 6 Plus. They say 27 to 36.6. So again, a slightly less seat height. So that's kind of where you're seeing the geometry changes. Standover height on the RadRover 6 Plus, 30.5. Same on the RadRover, so that hasn't changed. And they do say 5'4" to 6'2" on both the RadRover 5 and RadRover 6 Plus. And let's just glance here to the RadRover 6 Plus geometry. 5'2" to 6'2". So if you are on the shorter end, you definitely want to consider the step-through variation, and then the standover height is 22.5. And let's just bring up the RadRover step-through just so we can compare those side by side here. All right, so the RadRover step-through one apparently has a 20.25 inches standover height, and the new RadRover 6 Plus standover height is actually slightly taller. But then when you look at the rider height of the RadRover step-through one, 5'4" to 6'2", RadRover 6 Plus, 5'2" to 6'2". So anyway, they said they changed the frame. I'm reading it here. The frames have been re-engineered in-house to better accommodate riders at the bottom end of our height recommendation range. So you can kind of see that in some of the specifications that they're giving here. It looks like that is definitely in that seat height. Again, here's the RadRover step-through one with a 28-inch on the lower end compared to 25-inch. So that's where you're seeing a little bit more of that accessibility. And then they say enhanced ergonomics and lowered center of gravity, improve handling for a smoother, more confident ride. So they definitely changed the frame on that. I will be curious to kind of feel what I think about the 6 Plus compared to the original RadRover that I've ridden. Another thing that changed with the RadRover 6 Plus is they now have a custom geared hub motor. So they're not changing how many watts are going to the motor at peak, but they say that it has greater hill climbing ability that tackles hills faster than the RadRover 5 by an average of 25%. One thing to keep in mind is Rad Power Bikes is very unlikely to go above that 750 watt range, and that is because they want to stay within the class 2 electric bikes. Maybe they'll go to class 3 in a future model, but one of the things to keep in mind, and I have it here, I actually just brought up Bosch's website. The three classes are defined as follows. Class 1, e-bikes that are pedal assist only with no throttle and have a maximum assisted speed of 20 miles per hour. Class 2, these are Rad Power Bikes. E-bikes that also have a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour but are throttle assisted. Again, with the Rad Power Bikes, you get the right hand twist grip throttle. Class 3, e-bikes that are pedal assist only with no throttle and a maximum assisted speed of 28 miles per hour. Now here's the kicker. All classes limit the motor's power to 1 horsepower or 750 watts. Now that is why Rad is staying within that 750 watt range. They want to stay within these regulations, and to be honest, I can't blame them, and 750 watts is plenty of power. Of course, if you want a faster electric bike, you can definitely go find one for off-road use only. It's just kind of a little bit of a weird space when it comes to e-bike regulation in the United States currently. So it's interesting that they're still using a 750 watt motor, but they just geared it differently so it can tackle hills. And you can bet that we'll be testing that motor out pretty significantly when we get our bike to test out. But I think this is something that's definitely overlooked when people want more power. Rad is doing the 750 watt very intentionally. And while we're on that subject, it's worth mentioning that now with the RadRover 6 Plus, it looks like the controller is now integrated into the frame. I'm actually not exactly sure where it is, but it's likely that for all those people who are doing controller upgrades, I have no idea if you're going to be able to do something in the future as it relates to controller upgrades. I mean, it's possible, of course. Is install going to be harder? Probably. So if you're not aware, Bolton e-bikes and Electro Bike World sold and currently sell upgrade kits for the Rad Power bikes, and we did a video souping up my brother's Rad wagon, and it does make a pretty significant difference. But of course, you are pushing many more watts to the motor, and you can definitely feel it. Lots more torque, more hill climbing ability. But so that's something that's going to be interesting to see kind of how that plays out and how the third party accessories space kind of adjusts, or perhaps just doesn't release anything for this new RadRover 6 Plus. The other thing I'll touch on just briefly, 60 millimeters of travel with preload adjustment, tool-free spring preload adjustment allows the fork spring stiffness to be adjusted to suit various rider weights and terrain. And it says rated and tuned specifically for our e-bikes. The fork is tested EN 15194 and the spring weight is tuned to match the needs of an e-bike. And the bike comes with a halo headlight. Tail light is now integrated into the rear fender, so that's a slight change. And they activate when the bike turns on for safety. I actually like that. It's kind of nice. You don't need to remember. And of course, the visibility for that rear light is going to be better than something, that's mounted on the seat post. So to go along with the RadRover 6 Plus, the company also announced some accessories. I believe the RadRover rear rack is the same one that was on the old model. I have to do a little bit more research there, but it looked like it was the same one. And now they sell an optional accessory for $49, which is going to be a USB charger. And it looks like it plugs into the cables near the head tube area of the bike. So that's a little bit different than having a USB port directly into the screen on the front. The other thing that they also released is a battery terminal cover. And I actually like this. It's $5. And it used to be, and I personally have these, there's some folks on Etsy who have some 3D printed ones. So you can actually protect your battery connector within the cradle as well as the battery itself. And that offered some protection if you're trailering your electric bike, obviously traveling without the battery on. So it's nice that Rad now has their own custom designed battery terminal cover. I think $5 is totally acceptable price for something that's going to fit on there nicely. I believe this one just goes into the down tube, so it's not going to protect the battery, so you'll probably just store the battery somewhere else. And I think the connections are different on the battery anyway, but you can see that's where that terminal cover is going to be placed. Just prevents any water to go down there. So if you're going to be trailering your electric bike, highly recommend that accessory. The other accessories that they released are a battery travel case, and I think that is pretty much it. We can click view all here and see if there's anything else. I think those were the ones. These are all the accessories that are currently compatible with the RadRover 6 Plus, and I should note that these large basket roll top liners are new. Small basket roll top liners, the front rack, that's been around. Small basket, large basket, and they have some cargo straps, cargo nuts. That's been on the site for a little bit as well. And of course you have the bags, and then there's that USB charger. There we go. We can get a little bit of a close-up to see where that connects to. Right there near the head tube. Looks like there's going to be a cable there, and you can plug it in and then charge your phone. So interesting that they went with something external. And then here's the battery travel case. It says compatibility all 2017 and after model e-bikes, so it doesn't look like this is something that's only going to work with the RadRover 6 Plus. And there you go. There's the shark pack, is at least what I call it. You can see in that battery case. So something to perhaps consider if you travel with your electric bike. That's $59. And briefly, we'll just talk about the different colors. So this is the charcoal on the Step-thru version. It also comes in glossy white, you can see there. And you can see there on the screen is a fully outfitted RadRover 6 Plus Step-thru with the front rack, those roll top liners, some panniers, the rear rack. So that looks pretty nice. And you can see in some of their project images, they definitely have some shorter riders here who are riding the RadRover 6 Plus Step-thru. And I think that pretty much covers the main differences with the 6 Plus. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what this might mean going forward. I'm going to speculate a little bit because now it's a little confusing because Rad Power Bikes, their lineup, they have the RadRover 6 Plus and the RadRover 6 Plus Step-thru, but they also have the Rad Runner Plus. But for new customers, this is going to be somewhat confusing because the Rad Runner Plus does not have hydraulic disc brakes, does not have that new pack. This came out last year. So it's very interesting. They're going with a new battery pack, maybe on Plus models going forward, or perhaps there's going to be a refresh of new models. It's just going to be interesting to see what they do going forward with their naming conventions. And also, will the other models eventually get this similar semi-integrated pack or not? So maybe they'll keep their more affordable models with kind of that Shark pack with more external components, and then their Plus models will have the semi-integrated battery and with components a little bit more internal. So that's something that I definitely thought about as I was going through this. And I didn't really talk about price, but the RadRover 6 Plus is now $2,000. So now it is the most expensive bike in the Rad Power Bikes lineup. Of course, they still have the Rad Mission at $999, and they recently, so when they first announced the Rad Mission, it was at $999, then it went up to $1099 for 9 months or 10 months or somewhere around there. And now they have decreased the price, I think, to stay competitive with some of the other budget-priced electric bikes on the market, which I think was a very smart move. And I did review the Rad Mission if you want to check out that review. And then other models, they have, of course, the Radwagon 4, which was the bike that was released before this. That's the bike that we have. And they still have the Rad City, Rad Mini. Rad Mini is $1,500. But one of the things that I was thinking about is, what does this mean for their naming conventions? It's just a little bit more confusing. And the other thing is, are they going to announce a RadRover 6? And when is that coming? A non-Plus version, because they kind of skipped it, right? It's not the RadRover 5 Plus, it's the RadRover 6 Plus. So that leads me to believe that they perhaps are going to be refreshing their models sometime soon, and the RadRover 6 perhaps will be a little bit better than the RadRover 5. I think there's probably a reason that they did that. So some of the things that I've been thinking about as I've been thinking pretty extensively about the RadRover 6 Plus, and we also did a story on ebikeescape.com you can check out. We talked a little bit more in detail about some of the components. And maybe before we go, we'll just check out some of the pictures that Rad Power Bike shared. You can see there's the motor showing that extra power, and some lifestyle images that the company provided. Some of the shorter riders riding the RadRover 6 Plus. I definitely think that the bike looks great. I'm really excited to check it out. It's going to be interesting because the RadRover 6 Plus is their first foray into more a premium electric bike. And of course, the Fat Tire e-bike space is plenty packed at this point. There's someone who's a little bit shorter riding the RadRover 6 Plus. And so I did have another electric bike that I think a lot of people are going to be looking at as well with the 6 Plus. So the Aventon Aventure was recently announced by Aventon just a couple months ago, and I do think it is a compelling electric bike, especially since it's very price competitive with the RadRover 6 Plus. So the Aventon Aventure comes in at $1,900. It's got a integrated battery, and I'll probably do a write-up a little bit more in detail comparing the specs. The Aventon, of course, has a 28 mile per hour top speed, so it's a class 3 electric bike. Has a nice backlit LCD, front suspension, fenders, integrated lights. So something to look at for sure if you're looking at the 6 Plus. You can kind of see what bike might fit your needs the most. And a couple other things I'll talk about with the Aventon Aventure. 1130 watt peak, 750 watt sustained motor, 48 volt, 15 amp hour battery, so a little bit higher capacity than the RadRover 6 Plus. And they do have hydraulic disc brakes as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this $2,000 price point. It's going to be interesting to see how other companies respond. And one of the important things for some people in their purchasing decision, of course, is when are they going to receive their electric bike? They want it as soon as possible. And I think that's probably guiding some purchasing decisions from consumers. I was actually reading an article last night about Rad Power Bikes and some of the interesting things that they're doing to make sure that their cargo ships aren't sitting out in the bay waiting to be offloaded. Now, of course, if you're a Rad Power Bikes customer, you might be feeling the pain of items being in stock, but you need to keep in mind that Rad Power Bikes is the largest seller of electric bikes in the United States, which means there's a lot of other people competing for those same accessories. And of course, this is kind of crazy times as it relates to electric bikes in general. So I hope you found this video helpful talking about the RadRover 6 Plus, getting a little bit of my thoughts on this electric bike. I am super stoked. I cannot wait to get my hands on this bike and share the video with all of you. You can check me out on social media. I'll be sure to give you an update of when I'm going to be receiving this electric bike. And again, if you want to support the channel, you can use the links in the description before you make your RadRover 6 Plus purchase, perhaps, or any other Rad Power Bikes. I'll also have a link to our electric bike accessories list, as well as our electric bike deals page. And if you're looking at other electric bikes, we also have a top e-bike brands page where I include the brands that we truly believe in. Lots of bike brands that we ourselves have reviewed on the channel. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.